Next up, we have Tamara. Tamara, are you there?
Hey there.
Hey, we're talking about Common Stack today.
Yeah. So,
What's up with Stack? Obviously, you guys are a critical part of building in public and people having thoughtful discussions. So I'm excited to see what's up and what's going on.
cool. Glad to hear that. Let me see. Let me share my screen and make sure this is working right. Oops. Let's go to the beginning. Okay. Cool. Should I just jump in or do you want to ask?
Good, take it away. The floor is yours.
Cool. Okay, thanks. So, first of all, thanks, Meta Game. Super excited to be here. Very excited about MetaFest and all the cool talks that are happening these number of days. So I hope some of the things you hear in the next 20 minutes are going to affect the way you think about human cooperation. I'm not going to talk about cool bleeding edge technologies or anything meta. I'm going to talk about an ancient practice that's having a resurgence and challenging conventional wisdom about economies and governance. So I'm calling this talk Beyond State and Market because that phrase really stopped me in my tracks. When I first read it, I thought, oh, wait, we can do that. There's something beyond state and markets. And it just never occurred to me. But words have power. And these four words for me were like an incantation. The name is a tip of the hat to the those who have brought this concept of commons back into fashion. I could call it maybe, namely Eleanor Ostrom, who I'll speak a little bit more about, who wrote a 2010 academic paper titled "Beyond Markets and States: Polycentric Governance of Complex Economic Systems," and a collection of essays by David Bollier and Silke Helfrich, which is called "The Wealth of the Commons: A World Beyond State and Market." They are they are people who have done so much for bringing this idea of concepts back into the possibilities of human cooperation, breaking through to the other side of the myths that states and markets are the best or even the only way economies and governance can be successful. So the idea of these four words, beyond state and market, is also a challenge. Um, I don't know how many people are there because this isn't a real audience, but like, how many of you are satisfied with the world that the states and markets have created? And does anyone think there could be something different? So one of the oldest forms of human cooperation is called commons. We share this planet. This is something we have in common and is a commons as well. Commons have lasted for millennia, but since the 19th century have all but disappeared. The concept of commons is changing the game that is dominated by the 200 years of states and markets. So top-down governance systems are failing us. I just chose two particular things to quickly talk about today: corporate personhood versus natural persons, and global financial exclusion. So corporate personhood is clearly capable of outspending, outlobbying, and outmaneuvering natural persons. It means that the interest of the corporations, which is profits, bottom line, will supersede the interest of natural persons. We see many examples of this today. The interests of the environment or the interests of social cohesion, it's really the interest of number go up for the corporation that takes precedence over anything else, which makes our representative democracy in this form representing corporations better than representing most people. And then a little bit about global financial exclusion. I think people are familiar with this photo, pretty headline grabbing last year. Canada, a representative democratic nation, decided to borrow a practice from autocratic despots' playbook and freeze all the financial assets of any citizens suspected of supporting the protesters against the government policy. This was quite an eye-opening event for a lot of people who weren't expecting this to happen. But I think that this is not the end of it. It's really the beginning. New sanctions in Russia, basically locking a nation out of the SWIFT global consensus system. And the United States was holding Afghanistan's treasury reserves and just decided to spend it without asking anyone or any of the people of Afghanistan what they thought it should be spent on. So this is the golden rule, right? Not the do unto others golden rule, but the golden rule of whoever has the gold makes the rules. So top-down governance systems are failing us, but people can't govern themselves. So what do we do? Or can people govern themselves? This is Eleanor Ostrom. She basically um, won a Nobel Prize for proving that humans can cooperate with each other. In 2009, she was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for meticulous field research that she did in existing commons and showing that ordinary people are actually able to create rules and institutions that allow them to sustainably manage shared resources. One of the quotes that I like best of Eleanor Ostrom that Common Stack uses a lot is there's no reason to believe that bureaucrats and politicians, no matter how well-meaning, are better at solving problems than most people on the spot who have the strongest incentive to get the solution right. Markets are failing us. And I don't just mean today or this week. But what do these two pictures have in common? They're strange bedfellows here, right? But they represent enclosures. Enclosures are the expropriation and commercialization of shared resources for private market gains. In England, there was a Enclosure Act in 1773, which basically enabled enclosures of land. Nobles claimed lands made it private. They profited from hunting and extracting any other resources it contained. Any local villagers that had been using those commons for wood for fires or for home building, for agriculture, for foresting, for fresh water, no longer had access to those shared resources. They weren't shared anymore. On the right is California's Strawberry Creek. This has come under pretty fierce contest over the last few years because it is a creek that Nestle is using to bottle spring water. It's on federal land. Nestle, which is a Swiss water giant, basically pays the US Forest Service nothing and profits in the billions of dollars every year from the water that they sell in bottles. So here's two pretty, an old version of enclosures and new version of enclosures. But enclosures is not just the privatization of land and water, overextension of copyright law, turning the open internet into closed proprietary marketplaces, and any of our commonwealth, right? The picture of the earth encapsulates a lot of it: water, land, forest, fisheries, biodiversity, creative works, public spaces, indigenous cultures. So this idea is that, markets, the temptation to monetize resources tends to destroy any social solidarity or collective stewardship of a resource. Markets often benefit from the state's support of providing these resources like Strawberry Creek or other, public forests or minerals or airwaves for very little, actually, that we know of. But markets, right? How do we know how much something is worth unless we have a market tell us what something is worth? And here I go back to some of the academic research about commons. David Bollier and his colleague Silke Helfrich, who I mentioned earlier, have done an astounding amount of advocating for new thinking, even new language frameworks to explain commons in a way the modern mindset can understand it. So they talk of stewardship as opposed to ownership. He talks about different forms of value outside of the price system that we're most familiar with. And basically at this point, intuitively value things in. Particularly one of my favorite pieces here, and which is why I highlighted it, is, other values have much richer meanings. So social, ecological, cultural, generational value. If we were to start thinking of value in terms different than prices, we would find that we would take more care of some of the things that we have let become destroyed by commercial incentives. So what is this commons thing anyway? So very simply, commons is a resource, a community, and a set of social protocols. It has to be all three. With just one, a resource, it's not quite a commons. With just the community, it's not a commons. But when you have three of these together, the totality of these three, we can call a commons. And a commons comes about when a community treats a resource as a shared wealth. And there's no commonsing without commonsing. So it's a participatory action. People are engaged in managing and partaking of this resource that we share together. And now I'd say, there's a sentence that really caught my attention. It's, we're looking at commons now as a viable alternative to capitalism that puts human well-being and the planet above profit, right? So we look at other values other than the price of something. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little secret. Commons never really disappeared. They're all around us, and there's emerging new ones. Community agreements, like in the shores of Hawaii, who gets to take the next wave? There's this implicit informal agreement among the surfers in certain shores on what the right protocol is for who gets the next big wave. There's neighborhood parking agreements that are not official, but if you shovel the snow in Chicago, you get to use that parking spot, is like the unwritten rule of many communities. Seed and biodiversity preservation, community currencies, open access scientific journals, Creative Commons license. Commons are, in fact, the natural byproduct of human cooperation and human ingenuity. Okay, so what is Commons Stack doing? We're on a mission to help purpose-led communities deploy regenerative economies, and we are conceiving and building tools and protocols to make that a reality. We keep the 8 design principles for robust commons that Eleanor Ostrom derived in her seminal work governing the commons as our North Star. And we conceive and develop tools and protocols to help communities deploy commons. Our dream is, whenever a community says we want to manage and steward this resource collectively for the benefit of all, they have an open source library of knowledge and tools that can help them do exactly that. We do research, applied research, products and development, and newly services, which is where we're just starting to do. Some of these protocols are augmented bonding curves, which is essentially a bonding curve that then allows a kind of tribute every time there's action against the curve. And that tribute is a kind of tax that goes into a commons pool for the community to then steward and use for their mission. Conviction voting praise, which is a kind of reward system that creates a culture of gratitude, but also surfaces unseen work. Commons cultural build, commons deployment protocols, and lastly, the trusted seed, which is a membership of known altruists in Web3 space and a co-investment community as well. So we have been working very hard to build these tools, and their first community to use the Commons Stack design pattern was the token engineering community. So this is sort of the picture of like what the token engineering commons is today. I mentioned the augmented bonding curve and conviction voting. The token engineering community commons raised over 1.5 million DAI in a closed fundraise. So really just from the trusted seed or a group of known altruists. They collected over 200K from the augmented bonding curve, so price action on the bonding curve, and have funded over 200,000 for token engineering projects. Token Engineering Academy, which is, if you're not familiar with already, you should definitely check out, but it is provides education for aspiring token engineers. Proposal Inverter, Gravity DAO, Consilience Library, to name a few. And most importantly, the token engineering built a large, active, and engaged community. And that is what commonings is all about. A community stewarding a shared resource under a great set of protocols. Okay, so what's next? We asked the community who we should partner with to deploy the next commons. Anyone could nominate, but only the trusted seed could vote. And we received 36 nominations, and 98 unique voters chose a short list of 5 finalists. The entire nominations, the 36 nominations, were all extraordinary. The 5 finalists exceptionally so. Grassroots Economics, Precious Plastics, Refi DAO, Gravity DAO, and the AI Commons all of whom I hope do become commons. We used quadratic ranked choice voting so that the trusted seed could choose the community we partner with. So if you have trust token, you're able to vote. And 91 unique voters participated. And the next commons, who the Commons Stack will work hand in hand with to deploy their commons, is Grassroots Economics. So we are super excited to announce that Grassroots Economics and Commons Stack have really just begun this project together. We're looking at 9 months of deploying the cultural build and the technical build together. Grassroots Economics is a nonprofit since 2010, and they've been working in Kenya on the ground with local communities, helping communities, building community programs, including community inclusion currencies. I think they've had over 45 locations across Kenya start using these community inclusion currencies. And it's going to be an honor to work with Will and all of his team. And with that, I think I sped up thinking that it would take me too long to get through this, but we want to hear from you. So please reach out to us. You can DM Commons Stack on Twitter or myself. We're always open to talking about anything related to Commons or anything else you want to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Yeah, I want to also kind of go back and talk a little bit about what the commons is, and take a step back. How long have the commons been participating in the ecosystem, and what are some of the key milestones that they've accomplished for anyone that doesn't know?
Yikes, this is a great question. I don't know exactly the year. Maybe it's 2019, 2018. So I'd say the founders of Common Stack are, Griff Green, Jeff Emmett, and Dr. Michael Zargam got together. Griff was already the founder of Giveth, and of course Zargam was with Block Science, and they came together and imagined this idea of building an open source library for purpose-led communities to deploy their commons. So in the beginning of the Common Stack, we were pretty much exclusively a research organization, and developing concepts like the augmented bonding curve, developing concepts like conviction voting, which really allows many small people, many small token holders to I would say, have as loud a voice as larger token holders. So conviction slowly grows over time with sort of the way conviction voting works is essentially that conviction will grow, and eventually a funding proposal will pass if there's enough, small token holders who have a strong amount of conviction. So it changes this idea of, direction of a community being really organized by the largest token holders of the community. It makes it a little bit more fair for the larger community as preferences to be heard. And so then I'd say in 2020, when I joined, the token engineering commons, the token engineering community signaled that they were interested in using the common stack design patterns. So this idea of having these technical tools, but more importantly, sort of the cultural build, which Livia Derschmeyer is heading, has been heading, and is still, which is this idea that regardless of how much funding a community might have or how great the technical stack may be, it's actually the interactions of the community and the culture of the community that matters the most. So when Eleanor Ostrom was doing field research on these commons, the 8 principles that she came up with addressed things like clear boundaries, like who can and can't use this resource that's being that people are stewarding. Conflict resolution. So if there is a conflict, how does it get resolved or transformed into something? The graduated sanctions. So infractions against the rule slowly lead to the person who's breaking the rules to be excommunicated from the community. So all of these 8 principles are woven into the fabric of the culture, so that they're, transparency, mutual accountability, the ability to see who is participating in the community, and to have things very transparent so everyone is aware of, has, information symmetry. So all of those 8 principles are really woven into the fabric, and that's why the cultural build takes time. You can't push a button. You can push a button and launch a DAO, but you can't push a button and launch a culture. So the idea of having a commons culture that people practice and become familiar with, and turn on its head this idea of the technocracy, like there's being a small group of people who make all the decisions for a commons or a community or a DAO, but rather everyone in the community can make suggestions about the decisions of the community, even up to and including, right, like this idea of the parameters of the economy. So, for example, the augmented bonding curve parameters are set by the people in the community, and not by, like, really everyone in the community can suggest the parameters. Everyone in the community is educated about what the parameters are. We've built dashboards so that you can actually model changing small parameters of the augmented bonding curve and seeing the results, so that everyone actually has a chance to learn about the parameters and then make their own suggestions. And then eventually the community will vote on all of the suggestions that are made. Oh yeah, so then what happened next? So we kind of moved to, like, we're still doing research, but now we're applying that research by building products and protocols to allow commons to deploy. So the commons deployment process we're doing now, again, with Grassroots Economics. We'll be open sourcing all of those protocols, so any community can sort of just follow along with how to deploy a commons if they wanted to. Praise as a product is another tool that was built out of this cultural build, but has now become something that we're helping communities deploy in their own communities, to allow, the distribution of tokens, of community tokens, based on effort and contribution in the DAO.
That's awesome. I want to get back to praise as a product. I've got a question from Unipuff that I think you've definitely touched on some of the answers to this, but he specifically says Ostrom's principles were designed around kind of a scarcity model where the real world has a lot, kind of less, and in the digital sphere we have more kind of abundance and malleability, like to create tokens or to create. Kind of this culture. What kind of differences does it take when you're designing something for the digital space in digital commons rather than kind of the physical commons?
That's a very good question. I mean, I guess I would say that scarcity still exists, Like, we have a scarce amount of resources. If we just take the token engineering commons as an example, we still have a scarce amount of resources that we can apply towards building token engineering as its own engineering discipline. So there's, you know, I mean, I guess I would say there's, yeah, like it's, I almost want to say, like, the idea is that this commons can be cyber physical commons, right? I think that I think that these commons, like these design patterns, can actually be employed on the ground as well. I don't think that they have to be just, I mean, they are in Web3, but they're practices that extend past Web3. Um, and yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I feel like there's scarcity, and there's an abundance of many things, but a lot of the resources that we want to sort of protect and are not or like are regenerative if we steward them carefully, right? If we carefully steward things and they're not depleted, then we can sort of reliably count on them existing for I don't know, the future
I think
generations.
one of those things is information, right? And curating and making um, true information available to the people that need it, and even praise. I think praise and our ability to show love and recognition for people is a limited and scarce resource too. It's like our time, as much as we think we've got a lot of it, there's only so many hours in a day that we get to spend, and having that ability to praise each other. And I know that TEC does a great job of having that both at the start of the meeting, sometimes where they go around and they tell people like something that they're thankful for them. Uh, and that helps kind of share things that we can do and that really benefit people, that help connect with them as people. And then, as you say, like sharing information is kind of free for us. So making sure that everyone in the stack has got access to that is really critical too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, my pleasure. I just want to say, praise does so many things well. It's it's been really exceptional in the TC and Common Stack where we're using it. Giveth is using it. Um, Gnosis has decided to do a small pilot in their community, and we have many other DAOs who've started to ask us to help them deploy it in their communities, because it doesn't just provide you a way to say something more than thank you. Like it allows you to actually, that thank you to be backed by tokens of the community. So either some monetary reward or some governance in this community that you're participating in. So it incentivizes more participation in the community, and it rewards people's efforts in the community. But it also, there's so much work that we do, especially as remote workers or in decentralized autonomous organizations, right? That people don't see. It's emotional care, right? So it's sort of like helping somebody who's having a bad day is something that should be rewarded because it brings benefit to the entire community. Or spending an hour going over editing a document for somebody, or doing a code review for somebody that is outside, I guess, the parameters of what your work would normally be. So it creates a culture of gratitude and a culture of helping each other, and then surfaces all this work that you don't see. Sometimes we have a praise channel, and sometimes you just scroll through the praise channel and just be like, God, there's so much going on. People are helping other people everywhere in the community. It really feels like, I don't know, it brings about a sense of like cohesion and togetherness.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like the success of like completing something and getting recognition. A lot of the things that we do sometimes is thankless, and having just like the little bit of recognition for the hard things, and so to speak, like the frogs that we eat. Is definitely part of building a healthy organization and a healthy personal relationship with organizations. So thank you very much for facilitating that.
Cool. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful.